Good evening. I sincerely hope you had a wonderful day and are ready to drift off to a peaceful sleep. Did you start your day, as I did, with a wonderful cup of coffee? For many people, there's no better way to start the day than with a steaming cup of coffee. Some people like their coffee dark and rich, while others like theirs sweet and creamy. Some prefer brewing their own coffee at home, while others make daily trips to their local coffee shop. But with more than 2 billion cups consumed around the globe each day, there's one thing everyone seems to agree on. Coffee is one of the most beloved beverages in the entire world. There are many myths about the origins of coffee. One of the most popular legends is that of Kaldi, an Ethiopian goat herder. According to the legend, Kaldi noticed that his goats became excited and energetic after eating berries from a certain tree. Kaldi told the local monastery about his discovery, and the monks used the berries to create a special drink that kept them alert during long nights of prayer. While it's true that coffee's heritage can be traced back to Ethiopia, the actual details of its discovery remain unknown. But as word began to spread, coffee made its way to the Arabian Peninsula, where its journey truly began. By the 16th century, coffee was extremely popular in Persia, Turkey, and Egypt. Coffee wasn't just consumed at home, but also in public coffee houses. These coffee houses became social hubs where patrons would socialize, listen to music, play chess, and engage in intellectual discussions. In the 17th century, European travelers who had visited the city of Mecca brought back stories about their experiences, and coffee houses began appearing in European countries as well. In England, coffee houses were dubbed penny universities because it only cost a penny to buy a cup of coffee and join stimulating conversations. Many people began replacing their usual morning beverages of wine and beer with coffee, and those who drank coffee had more energy throughout the day than those who drank alcohol. Since then, coffee's popularity has continued to rise, and it remains one of the most profitable commodities in the world. Before coffee is brewed and poured into a cup, there is a long process involving several steps between being planted and purchased. Coffee beans are actually seeds. Coffee seeds that are dried and roasted become the aromatic drink we know and love, while seeds that remain unprocessed are planted to produce more coffee trees. Coffee seeds are normally planted in shaded nurseries, where the seedlings are regularly watered and protected from the sun. After several months, the young trees are then planted outside. Farmers plant coffee trees during the rainy season because moist soil is better for the tree's roots. Once planted, it takes 3 to 4 years for the coffee trees to bear fruit, which are called coffee cherries. Coffee cherries start out green, but they turn bright red as they ripen. In many countries, the cherries are picked by hand in a tedious and labor-intensive process, but in larger coffee fields, the process is usually done by machine. Coffee pickers can collect up to 200 pounds of coffee cherries a day, and a harvest of that size can produce approximately 40 pounds of coffee beans. Each day, the harvested cherries are transported to a plant where they are processed. The cherries need to be processed right after picking, or else they will spoil. Depending on the location and availability of resources, coffee cherries can be processed one of 2 ways: the dry method or the wet method. The dry method is the traditional way coffee is processed. It has been around for centuries, and it is still the preferred method in countries where water is scarce. In this method, the coffee cherries are laid out on a huge surface where they can dry under the sun. Throughout the day, the cherries are raked and turned to avoid spoilage. During the night, the cherries are covered with sheets to keep them dry. It usually takes a few weeks for the cherries to dry and turn black. At this stage, the outer skin becomes easier to remove. In the wet method, the pulp and outer skin are removed before drying so that only the coffee's parchment skin remains. After the cherries are harvested, they go through a pulping machine where the pulp and outer skin are separated from the beans. The beans then pass through a series of water channels where they are separated according to size and weight. Once the beans are separated, they are moved to fermentation tanks where different enzymes dissolve the layer of mucilage encasing the beans. After fermentation, the beans are rinsed and ready for drying. Beans that have been dried are called parchment coffee. Parchment coffee needs to go through a few more steps before it can be packaged and exported. First, the coffee is hulled. If the coffee was processed using the dry method, hulling involves the removal of the dried cherry's entire husk. If the wet method was used, only the thin layer of parchment needs to be removed. The next step is polishing the beans to make sure no slivers of skin have been left behind. This is an optional step, and there is little difference between polished and unpolished beans. However, polished beans are considered to be of better quality. The next step is sorting and grading the beans. The beans are generally sorted by weight and size, but they are also inspected for other imperfections. Beans that are considered unacceptable due to their size, weight, or color are removed from the batch. The milled coffee beans are then exported to different parts of the world. Before the beans are ready for public consumption, they are brought to testing facilities where coffee experts, called cuppers, test the coffee's aroma and taste. First, the physical appearance of the beans are inspected. Then, a small portion of the beans are roasted, ground, and mixed with boiling water. The cupper inhales the brew, tastes a spoonful, and spits it out. Cuppers test hundreds of different coffee batches each day, and expert cuppers are able to determine the coffee's origins based on taste and aroma alone. With very few exceptions, coffee beans are roasted before they are sold. Milled coffee beans are quite light in color, and the roasting process transforms them into the dark and aromatic beans people are most familiar with. The beans are placed into machines where they are roasted at 550 degrees Fahrenheit. Throughout the roasting process, the beans are kept in constant motion to prevent them from burning. Once the beans reach an internal temperature of 400 degrees Fahrenheit, the roasting process can be stopped, resulting in a light or medium roast. If the beans are kept in the roasting machines a while longer, they become darker and start producing an oily sheen, resulting in a darker roast. After roasting, the coffee beans are ready for grinding. Coffee beans can be ground into coarse granules or into a fine powder, depending on how the coffee will be brewed. This is why coffee prepared with filters is more coarse than coffee used in Italian espresso drips. Most stores and coffee shops will sell ground coffee, but there are also many coffee drinkers who prefer grinding their own beans immediately before consumption to get the freshest brew possible. Depending on personal preference and the availability of equipment, there are many ways to prepare coffee. One of the earliest methods of brewing coffee involves adding ground coffee to a pot of water and bringing it to a boil. This is the method used in brewing the popular Turkish coffee. In most coffee makers, hot water passes through a filter which holds the ground coffee. In this day and age, most people own automatic coffee makers that use gravity to brew coffee. In most coffee makers, hot water passes through a filter which holds the ground coffee. The passing water extracts the coffee's essences and oils, while the coffee grounds remain in the French press. Steeping coffee releases a larger percentage of caffeine than most methods. Coffee can also be brewed using the espresso method, where hot pressurized water is forced through the coffee grounds. Espresso is very concentrated and is often used in various coffee-based beverages, such as cappuccinos, lattes, macchiatos, and more. Busy coffee drinkers, or those who don't have access to coffee-making equipment, can purchase instant coffee at supermarkets and convenience stores. Instant coffee is made of soluble powder that can be mixed with hot water and consumed immediately. Although instant coffee is often perceived as inferior to freshly brewed coffee, many people feel like the convenience it offers makes it a worthwhile choice. Regardless of how coffee is prepared, packaged, processed, or planted, one thing is certain. Each cup of coffee wouldn't be possible without the hard work of thousands of people. From the farmers and plantation workers, to the cuppers and roasters, all the people involved in the coffee-making process are instrumental in creating the dark and delicious beverage enjoyed by billions around the world.